Well, welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk. Today we want to continue the conversation about racial relations and especially how those play out in the church with Pastor Colby Hill and Pastor John Lewis. These guys, this is an awesome conversation. Some really good stuff is here. So take the time, hear us out, and let's talk.
There's a type of racism that we see. I don't know that it has a name, but have you ever seen when we like people of a different race if they act like our race? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I kind of noticed that sometimes. I'm like, okay. They like black people, but they don't like black people like me. They like a different kind of, sometimes I laugh, I'm like, or you see that person that says, they're like, I got a white friend. Oh, he's cool. That means he listens to gangster rap. He's like that. I was like, I don't know what kind of racism that is,
right.
But there's got to be something wrong with that too. Accepting the person for what, equality is accepting that person for who and what they are, not making them change to be what you want them to be so that you can accept them. So sometimes I see that where maybe someone that's in power, they say, okay, well, I want to be associated with this race of people, but I want that part of that culture that represents what I do. And back when I used to take these classes with the state, I did the diversity class, we talked about hues. We talked about the hue of the skin.
Right.
And how they had done all these studies on how dark-skinned black people don't get the same shake as light-skinned black people. And that white people were okay with having a light-skinned person as their friend if they talked a certain way and things like that, but they were not okay with having all the stuff we do.
That's colorism.
People need Jesus.
Yeah. They do. People need Jesus.
People need Jesus.
And it's perception. It literally is. I don't want to get in trouble with these stories, but it literally is. Chris Wagnon says to me one time, we're out somewhere and somebody's eating something crazy. And I'm like, that's crazy. Why are they eating that? And he goes, it's what your mama fed you.
That's right.
And that's true.
That's right.
But that's also true in how you see other people.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in the Wesleyan tradition, which meant there weren't any black people in our church, but the idea that you should not treat people differently because of the color of their skin was preached. So it was kind of halfway right. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. A lot of times it's preached that way, but when you bring one home,
that's a whole different deal. That's a whole different deal.
Bring one home,
but I would hear that, and it would ring true in my ears because, okay, when you say people like people, they're like them. The most influential people as I was coming along, I was into music and being a pastor. My first music teacher was a very dark-skinned African-American pastor's wife. Okay. And she taught, and I just adored this woman for 4 years in high school. And I learned to sing from her to the point that my vocal coach in college looked at me and said, "You scare me." And I'm like, "Why?" "Well, you sing like a black person." I said, "Thank you." That conversation literally happened. And then my favorite, my idols, if you will, in the preaching world were Chuck Swindoll, who's as white as they come, but Evie Hill, Tony Evans, these people. And that's who I learned to, oh, come on, I can't call his name all of a sudden, T.D. Jakes. These guys, I watched T.D. Jakes sweat through the lapels on his coat one time.
Preaching until you sweat.
Oh my word, and I would just listen to these guys over and over again. And so when I began to minister, having people of color around us or on our team wasn't something we wanted to learn how to allow. It's something I wanted to see happen because I guess this is almost a wrong way to think. They can preach better. Now that's the wrong way to think. You know what I'm saying? That's mine coming up. That's mine coming up. But you know, so it was a different way of viewing it. Now I will tell you, inside the church today, we're still not on our staff as integrated as we need to be, but we offer people opportunity. And so when Colby joins our staff, Colby wants to plant a church. We let him plant a church to people who do not know us. It might look like we pushed Colby out, when in reality, you wanted to plant a church.
Yeah.
You know, John comes in, already had a church. And so, you know, we see this a lot, and we're working at it, you know.
Yeah, I think, well, I want to switch. I want to ask ask Pastor Colby a question. Because you come from an area kind of like the makeup of the church, like the area that you live in. What's the racial makeup of?
Now, just for everybody to know, Pastor Colby's from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, so, I mean, what is that like?
Traditionally seen as white and Republican.
And it is. The state. So I used to joke, the state of Indiana fits that bill. Mm-hmm. It is overwhelmingly white and Republican. For that reason, I call Indianapolis an oasis in the desert, because it's different. It's a lot more racially mixed and more Democratic leaning. I don't know what the percentages are, but I think they reflect more so the same percentages across the country. So the makeup of the country, I think blacks are 13% of the population. Wow. I think it's somewhere around that in Indianapolis as well, maybe a little higher. But yeah, that's where I was born and raised. But even in that, the birds of a feather flock together. Like the old cliches are actually true. Okay. Had you been able to get a glimpse into my upbringing, you wouldn't have known that blacks only made 13% of the population where I grew up. Because in my area, my side of the railroad tracks, I was surrounded by blackness. Okay. And you only you only encountered people of other ethnicities and backgrounds when you ventured out. You had to go someplace intentionally to do that. And so it wasn't until I got to high school that I went to a private Catholic school that was prominent in the area. And that was when the tables got turned. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, the world looks a little different, you know? Yeah. Yeah,
because I grew up in D.C., and so everything was predominantly black. And I didn't start meeting white people until I came out here and to Waldorf. Yeah. I always make this little joke. When I grew up, you know, the Muslims would always tell me, you know, look out for the blonde, blue-eyed devil. He used to always tell me that, look out for the blonde, blue-eyed devil. And I always tell people, I was like, you know, when the first time I got robbed, the guy wasn't blonde, nor was he blue-eyed. You know, so I learned real quick that all of us can do some bad things to one another. Right. But in growing up, the only time we saw Caucasians were if they were, if the police came, some of our teachers. But I had no real interaction, and there was probably one or two in our school. They didn't stay there very long, but maybe one or two in all the schools that I went to. So I didn't really have any real interactions until I came out here. Well, I shouldn't say that, but maybe earlier, because I did go to Duval. I did go to Duval High School too. But anyway, when I started to meet people here of all colors, I still had my, I guess my racist or stereotypical thoughts. Like I would, if I saw a Ford pickup truck, I would think to myself, that's got to be a Caucasian, like, redneck, right? You know, you just think like that. Yeah. You just have all these ideas in your head, and you don't know that you're passing them on. Mm-hmm. You don't know how bad they really are. Like somebody might say, like, I get cold quick. And even to this day, somebody says, man, you know those white people gonna keep that building cold, man. You better put your coat on. Even now, this is nothing. Man, let's drag it all out. Y'all brought
Which
the wrong.
is one of the reasons I wore long sleeves.
You brought me over here. You know what you was gonna get past it, Mike. That's why you keep me away from here. But the thing is, we still have those things that we're saying about one another, and then when they get caught on tape, we're running around apologizing. No, that's who you are. If you go on Facebook right now, people are acting like they really are right now.
That's right.
The ones
What's in their heart.
Oh my goodness,
Oh, yeah.
they are saying what, and I just screenshot it. I said, man, I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this later on. But it's just, we have these stereotypical, these racist thoughts and mannerisms that we need to get rid of. We need to address them. We need to talk about them. We need to talk about them in a way where we're not oppressing one another because we think this way, because all you're gonna do is make somebody hide it. Like if someone says something like, well, they gotta have their watermelon. They gotta have their fried chicken.
Those are stereotypes I'm okay with.
Yo, that's
I
my
enjoy
house.
both.
Because you like chicken and watermelon.
I enjoy both of them.
That's actually my house. So, that might be more southern.
But you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I hear you.
We all have these little things that we do and say that are racist, and when we hear somebody else say them, we go, "Oh, did you hear what he said?" Sure. Instead of all jumping in there saying, "Hey, man, what's the plan to when I gave my life to the Lord?" So I was in a record industry for a while, and we did gangster rap or just rap when it first came in. When I gave my life to the Lord, I stopped using the N-word. Okay, I actually stopped cussing, period. I haven't said a cuss word since 1998. Now, some call that legalistic. Some say you're just lying.
Sanctified.
No, it's just everybody has a level that they want to go to in God, I believe, for me, that you make yourself a bad witness when you use that type of language. Nobody's gonna come to you and say, "Pray for my mother," after they hear you drop the F-bomb. But my point here is that I knew that was a derogatory term, whether a black person used it or a white person. But there were other blacks that told me it's not a bad word if a black person is using it. And they would say, and you've heard this argument before, a black person calling another person an N-word is okay because we've earned the right to, and I would say, that's just dumb. Because we know that this is a derogatory term. We don't use it. So this is what I mean when I say, get Christ in your heart and you'll begin to want to root out inequalities. Right. You want to, whenever you see somebody being wronged, you'll want to jump in there and you'll want to fight and make a change for that person. And I believe that that's what God is calling us to do. He said, yep, we want to level the playing fields with our color. We want to be more fair to women. Women are getting a bad shake no matter what race they're in. Sure. We want to be, those that are not uneducated don't have to be treated badly because they haven't gotten to a certain level of education. Right. There are all types of lines that we can cross and say, I'm going to make it better because of this. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to bring that out as well.
See, I've always believed that broad social change is actually brought about one heart at a time. But you've got to win so many hearts that the broad social change, I kind of think like this moment. This moment in our culture, there's this moment where the whole country is going, but yeah, this needs to change. And that it has taken years. It has taken our lifetimes, really, for that shift in thinking to come about. But it's happened one heart at a time. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel. You change one heart at a time until what John is saying is absolutely true. The country starts to turn around and go, this is not who we, or at least this is not who we are, or at least it's not who we ought to be. and the whole country starts to change because one heart at a time, the blood of Christ, power of the Holy Spirit starts setting people free.
Oh,
I just believe
train
that.
of thought. That's what. Hold on, I got my train of thought back. Hold on. Yeah, I was going to say something about the Black Lives Matter thing. I was going to say that I got it from the very start, but I knew other people didn't get it, and I wanted to kind of equate it when we were at Gallaudet. We were looking at trying to make things fair, make sure things were fair.
Gallaudet is a local university for deaf people.
Yeah, and we were with them on making change for people who could not hear.
Right.
But when someone stood up and said, "We're gonna make it right. We're gonna help them," because at that time they wanted a deaf president.
Right.
Nobody else came out and say, "Well, blind people matter too."
Right.
That was the point I wanted to make. When they were going through the trial of life of equality, nobody yelled on the other side and said, "Well, blind people need this too," or people understood the fight. So that I got the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and I knew people would say, all lives matter. It wasn't that all lives didn't matter. It's just right now, this is where the fight is. This is where the help, needs to be. And so I should mention that earlier. I just lost my
People are naturally selfish. And so it's hard for us to stay focused on something that doesn't necessarily directly pertain to us. And so I think that's the approach that a lot of people are taking when they hear Black Lives Matter, where the initial thought is to go, but what about me?
Exactly.
And that shifts, and that's why I think your point is so poignant. Like, at the end of the day, it is about individual hearts being changed.
Yes.
And the only way, we can't legislate it, we can't organize and mobilize towards it.
Amen.
Except the church has to become that mobilizing entity. And I've been praying, I have to shift my prayers, because at first I was kind of going, God, would you send another Billy Graham? Another person that could draw people by the millions and have those moments of, he had these big gatherings and thousands of people are coming to Christ at a time. And I think God kind of spoke to me in a different way, and he was like, well, I'm raising up lots of Billy Grahams.
Amen.
Instead of reaching the masses, we've got this pandemic and everybody's sitting at home, and now Billy Grahams are the pastors, and they're training up their people in their homes. They have captive audiences. And so we're seeing transformation happen. I don't know what the numbers are going to be when we all get back together, but I have a vision that people have been coming to Christ all throughout this pandemic from right in their own homes.
Right.
And hearts are being changed, and that's what we're seeing, some of what we're seeing.
Some 20, 25 years ago, somebody asked me the question and just made me think about where's the next Billy Graham? Because he was getting older, and it was obvious that his career was going to end. And it was obvious that Franklin he was going to pursue the Samaritan's Purse thing, not necessarily the mass crusade thing. And I remember kind of praying about that, and God saying, I put the Billy Grahams and had them stay in the pulpits now, because it's a different era. So the next Billy Graham is Rick Warren. The next Billy Graham is T.D. Jakes. The next Billy, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They stayed in the churches, and instead of going all over the place doing these mass rallies, they stayed in the churches, and they're building these churches. Now, I believe that in order to effect social change, what the church must do is preach the gospel of Christ first, because the blood of Christ and the presence of the Holy Spirit is what's going to change the way we think. But I think the churches need desperately to work hard at having their congregation reflect the population that surrounds them. And if there is a great sin in North American churches, and there are plenty of them, but if there is one great sin, I would say right now, it is there are too many churches where the congregation inside that building does not reflect the population around that building. And so I think if we can work at that, we can worship together, learn to know each other, learn to be able to actually understand words that are coming out of people's mouths and why a phrase like Black Lives Matter actually does mean something and isn't offensive to me. And then we can count on the Holy Spirit and the blood of Christ to set us free.
Amen.
So thanks for joining us today. Look, as a result of this conversation, here's what I'd like to ask you to do. I'd like to ask you to create and build relationships with people that are not like you. And I'd like to ask you to read and grow in your thinking about these issues. On the relationship side, actively work at building a relationship and having these open, honest, and in humility, understanding conversations between people of different races. Learn from one another what words mean and what effect words have. Just do the work of getting to know someone that's not like you. It will go a long way towards settling this issue, one person, two people at a time. That's the only way we're actually going to get this to work out. Number two, read. Read in areas that you're not familiar with. Far too often, we have a general thought, we want to believe this, so we only seek out material that say what we want to believe. Intentionally look for material that's from another perspective, that's from another side. Find a way to grow your thinking so that you can think more broadly about these issues. Now, if today's been helpful to you, we want to ask you to like it, to follow it, to subscribe, to comment, whatever you can do to help us get the word out about these programs. We want to help people think better, and in order to help them think better, we're going to sit down and ask them to talk with us.